Start the record button. Chapter 3. So again, I want to remind you guys about questions. I know you guys are definitely my quieter group of the two. Again, I want to encourage you guys to ask questions. It's really important to ask questions, especially if you have a legitimate concern. I did talk to my other class a little bit about this because I know 90% of the time you don't want to ask a question that you have because you're afraid that, oh, I'm going to look dumb, or it's probably going to be a dumb question. To me, there's no such thing as dumb questions in this class because one thing that you guys have to realize is some of you are on completely different levels of driving. Some of you grew up around cars. You understand cars, you understand how they work. And like that to you is what video games are to others. You just get it. Whereas others did not grow up around cars. When I was growing up, we had cars. That's it. If my dad had an issue to fix with the car, he took it to a service station. We never fixed cars. And if my dad did fix a car, I wasn't involved with it. So I didn't ever grow up with knowing how cars worked other than you threw the key in, you turned it, and you're good. But as far as the driving aspect of that, I did grow up driving. I would take trips up with my grandpa to Westfield, which some of you girls who played volleyball and I don't know if you did this at all for track last year, but Akron, Westfield, small towns in Iowa, and Westfield is the smaller town of the two. But I would sit in the passenger seat and I would grab the steering wheel and drive my grandpa's vehicle. That's how I grew up learning how to drive, and that was 7 years old. And, so I didn't grow up knowing how cars worked, but I grew up with the experience of being able to steer and drive. So the first time when I got behind the wheel, I was 13. I didn't have my permit, but I still understood how a lot of that stuff worked. So there's one aspect that I was good at and another aspect that I had no idea. The first time I learned about transmissions and all that was when I was in driver's ed class. So I had no idea what that meant. So keep in mind that, like I said, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And again, most of the stuff that you read from the book is going to benefit you more by either seeing it or experiencing it yourself. So what I want to do is I want to help you get the most that you can out of the chapter by maybe trying to explain it, or I have, a couple of things here that will help you better understand it. So, for example, I had a student last night Zoom with me during office hours because they didn't understand what the book meant by when you go to start the vehicle. I know this is more chapter 4, but when you go to start the vehicle, it says to bring the key back. And so long story short on that, I said, hey, jump on the Zoom. I said, I'll show you what I mean, or what they mean. So we Zoomed for 2 minutes, And I went out to my truck and I showed her what they meant by that. So after that, it was like, okay, it makes sense. I just didn't understand the way the book worded it, but she knew what we were talking about. It's just the wording in the book didn't make sense to her. But she obviously understood how to start a car. It was just, what do they mean by turning the key back? So, again, it may not necessarily be that you don't understand something. It just means, hey, I need some clarification on this because the book's wording is weird. Or, maybe it is. I don't understand what they mean. And maybe you do. It's just worded different. So, don't be afraid to ask questions. Because again, if you leave questions unasked, then it's just that you won't know. And if it's a question on the test, that's not going to help you out. So hopefully I bought you some time to look through. And what do you got?
With number 5 on multiple choice, it says when turning to the right, the contact patches of the blank will increase in size.
All right, let me look up, because some of these terms are a little bit different. They mean the same thing, but they change the wording on it. So I'm just going to verify what contact patches are. Okay, so in this case, we're talking about weight distribution. So when you turn to the right, basically your body wants to move to the left. So with that, when you turn to the right, the contact patches or the gripping strength of the left side is going to keep you on the road. So when you turn to the right, basically the weight distributes to the left. So all that weight is going to be put onto the left side. So your contact is going to increase there because the weight is on that left side. Okay, so there's a perfect example. I had to just verify what contact patches were, because again, until we started this program, never heard of contact patches. So again, just to reiterate, there's no such thing as dumb questions, because even I learn new stuff. I mean, granted, I already knew what that was, but now it's just a new term of contact patches where it's like, to me, I look at it as weight distribution, because like all the force is being put on the left side of the vehicle when you turn right. And when you turn left, all the force is being put on the right side of the vehicle. When you stop, all the force and weight distribution, or the contact, goes to the front. And when you accelerate, it goes to the back. So typically when you accelerate, it goes from the front to back. When you brake, it goes from the back to the front. When you're driving or when you're stopped, it's stable. Okay, the weight is evenly distributed. All right, what else? And again, even if your question doesn't specifically relate to the chapter, this is our time to have a good discussion. So it might be, hey, I was driving with my parents last night and this happened. And maybe you have a question about that. So, yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Sorry. How long were you turning the key for? Should you feel like the grinding gear, or not the grinding gear, but like the
starter?
The starting sound, yeah.
That's almost kind of for you guys, it should be a listen at first. For me, it's a feel. Because I've started vehicles thousands of times. So I know what to feel. So the idea of the feel is you feel when the engine's started. For you guys, it's a listen because you have that initial start as it's starting to go. And then when it actually starts, that's when you let it go. So really, I would say a 2 to 3 second count should be enough for you to let it go once you started. So it's like you turn 1 1000, 2 1000. That should be enough. But the important thing is you need to probably listen. So once the engine is starting, like actually like running started, that's when you should let go. Not necessarily turn, okay, it started 1 1000, 2 1000. No, you turn, it started, okay, let go. So you should let go of the key as soon as you hear that the engine has started. So, because you have that initial, like, I don't know what to call it. I know you guys know what I'm talking about as the car is trying to start and then it actually starts. You want to let it go at that breaking point of the starting.
Adding on to my last question, I had a really short addition to that. How long when you say, like when the engine actually starts, you have like a bit of a safe zone before it starts to grind?
Oh, maybe a couple seconds after that. And honestly, I can't tell you because I've never done it. I don't know what happens if you would turn the key and hold it there. I don't know if it eventually goes to a grinding because and I say that because I've never done it before. Now, can anyone jump on and tell me if they have done it or if somebody they know has done it? They went and started their car. The car's running. And the driver forgot the car is running and they tried starting it again. So just jump on if you've been in the car when that's happened. No one has been in the car when that's happened? Because I've been guilty of doing that a few times.
I mean, I did it the other day. I started it and it scared me really bad, but I've never been in it when I'm not the driver.
Okay. So Lexi, what happened when you tried to start the car again?
Basically, it just made like a grinding noise and the car started pulsing really violently and I didn't know what was happening. So I stopped the car and it scared me really bad.
Okay. So if that happens again, you don't have to stop the car. You obviously just want to stop the grinding sound. So basically what happened is when you pull the key forward into that starting position, that's the time when the starter actually works in the car, and that's the only time it should function in the car. After that, the starter's done. So what happens is when you try to activate the starter and the car's already running, it makes that grinding noise. And obviously they tell you that in the book because that is a bad thing, because you don't want to ruin your starter and you don't want to wear the starter out. Why? Because it's like $100 or $200 replacement to replace the starter. Starters eventually do go out, but you don't want to accelerate that process. And like I said, Lexi, I've been guilty of that too. You know, you get going and doing some different things, and I forgot the car was started, and I go to start it again, and it makes that grinding sound. And yeah, it is as bad to the car as it sounds, but obviously won't necessarily kill it by accidentally doing that a time or two. Starters are intended to last a long time, but obviously that wears down the life when you do that. But again, it's not completely uncommon for something like that to happen. But so to kind of answer your question, Ben, I don't know how long you should wait. But like I said, I always let go right afterwards. So I don't know if it does get to a point where there's a grinding sound. I know if you reactivate it, you will get that grinding sound. All right, what else? Good questions.
When would we use hand-to-hand steering?
Hand to hand or hand over hand?
Hand to hand.
A lot. So when you're driving down a regular road and road has curves, this will be your normal turn. To the right, to the left, right? But anytime you go to change directions, like from one road to another, depending on how sharp the turn is, you might just need a hand-to-hand, or you might need a hand over hand. Obviously, if you're turning into 90 degrees, you're probably going to need a hand over hand. Or it might be, say you're turning into a parking spot where you might just need hand to hand. So hand to hand and hand over hand are intended for sharper turning. That's a little bit sharper than just like curves on a road. All right, what other questions? That's it? Nothing else?
When it
All right, what do we got?
when it says if a vehicle's speed doubles from 20 to 40 miles per hour, the distance needed to stop increases by 4 times. What if it's only like 20 to 30 miles per hour?
Okay, good question. I won't worry with the 20 to 30 for right now. I'm just going to hopefully answer the question so you'll be able to answer the rest by yourself. Because a lot of people don't quite understand the math involved in that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify that for you. Because obviously your acceleration difference is a number, and then all of a sudden your braking distance is a totally different number. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples to help you out. Because when you increase your, excuse me, when you increase your speed, you measure that in times. Okay, so I believe the example they gave you was 20 to 40. So you double your speed. So you increase the speed 2 times. So whatever the amount of times it increases, you need to square that number. Okay, so we go from 20 to 40. Okay, we double, so that's 2 times more. All right, 2 squared. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times the braking distance. Okay, so now let's go from 20 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour. Okay, well, 20, 40, 60, we increase the speed 3 times. So how much do we increase the braking distance? Well, now we go 3 squared. 3 times 3, 9 times. Okay, one more, 20 to 80, 4 times the increase of speed. So 4 squared is going to be 16 times the braking distance. Okay, so basically whatever your times it is increasing, you need to square or multiply by itself the amount of braking distance that you need. Does that help, Lauren?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and I know most people don't quite understand that because, again, they're driver's ed people, they understand the driving portion, maybe not necessarily trying to simplify the math of it. And again, the first time I did that, I'm like, what the hell are they trying to say? Like, I don't get that. Okay, so then I went and figured it out, like, okay, it's an exponential thing. So you have to square, which is why, you know, the more you increase your speed, the significantly more you have to increase.
You're muted, by the way.
Sorry about that. I temporarily lost internet for a second, so I think we're hopefully good to go. So like I was saying, it's just an exponential deal. And again, something simple like that, I had to actually learn myself to understand what it was that they were talking about. So, all right, what else? All right, if nothing else, go ahead and turn on your cameras and go ahead and log in to take the Chapter 3 test. Ben and Ashley, I will get yours sent out.
Midnight. Yes, cereal. That was you.
All right. I know there may be a couple of you still working to finish up the test. That's fine. I'm going to give you a couple options. I would like to start in on chapter 4. So with that, I'll give you the option. If you want to listen in to chapter 4 and hold off on the test, that's fine. If you want to continue and finish up the chapter test, that's fine as well. If you decide to hold off for now, just make sure that you get that test submitted before, like make sure that's the first thing that you do after we're done today. All right, Maddie, I just saw your message. Maddie Glover. I just responded to you in the chat. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All right. And let me know if you do have any issues beyond that. Chapter 4. What do we got? Questions? And again, I know chapter 4 is an ideal chapter where application is better than reading. So again, if it was one of those things where wording wasn't done well and you need clarification, those are good questions to ask.
Okay, for like, there's a part where it was like, if you need to take a sudden turn or something, you stick your hand out the window, or like there's a certain way to move your hand. I don't know. Let me find it in the book.
Okay. Were they talking about hand signals?
Yeah.
Okay. So hand signals are fairly uncommon when it comes to driving. But for most of you that have gone through some type of like bike training, bicycle training, you guys know the hand signals for that. Some of you may not, but if you have ridden a bike, you're supposed to know the 3 hand signals, which is only used with your left hand. The reason why it's only used with your left hand is mainly for drivers, because being in the left side of the vehicle, you only have your left hand to stick out the window. Okay, so I'm gonna slide over here a little bit. Okay, so if you want to make a left-hand turn, again, with the car, this is really going to be if your blinkers are not working. Okay, so if you have some issue with your communication, which in this case would be your blinkers, that's when you would use these hand signals. So when you want to make a left-hand turn, okay, you're using your left hand, which is when your left hand and your arm extends straight out. Okay. If you want to make a right hand turn, okay, your hand goes straight up at a 90-degree angle. So you bend here and it goes up. Okay. If you want to slow down or brake, then it's a 90-degree angle down. Okay, so the purpose of that is if you are not able to communicate with your turn signals or brake lights, that's what the hand signals are for. All right. What else do you guys got?
I really don't understand how the anti-braking system works.
Good question. ABS is what they call it, standing for anti-lock brake system. Okay, so this is a newer, updated technology, probably in the last 30 to 40 years. So most every vehicle that you guys get into have anti-lock braking system. Okay. And it does sound complicated, but surprisingly, it's a lot easier. Hold on one second. Okay. Because the word or the phrase itself basically identifies what it is. Okay. So let's just look at that. Anti-lock braking system. So it's the system that's in your brakes that prevents them from locking up. Okay. So now the purpose, why is that important? So in older vehicles, if you were driving, let's say in wintry conditions, okay, and you needed to stop because you started sliding, the old method was to, they call it pump your brakes. So what you do is if my foot is on the brake, I would press in and out. Okay. Because if I pressed down on the brake and I held it, they would lock up. The brakes would lock up and they would not unlock until the pressure is released, which basically means that the car comes to a stop, which obviously can be dangerous because if your brakes lock up while you're driving, you no longer have control of the braking portion of your vehicle. All you have left is steering. So what they did was they designed the anti-lock braking system to prevent the brakes from locking up. And again, maybe some of you have experienced this, maybe some of you have not. I would assume if you are out and about in bad driving conditions, you've probably heard it before. So the way it works in my vehicles is if I'm driving, and this actually happened one day coming to school, I was approaching a four-way stop, and when I started applying the brakes, I was on a sheet of ice. So what I did is I had to press the brake harder and harder. Well, the more I pressed the brakes, my vehicle started to make a grinding noise as it came to a stop. And what it's doing is that grinding noise is preventing my brakes from locking up. So that's the ABS system working. But what I heard was just like a grinding type sound. It didn't sound good, but that's just how the system works. So I don't know if any of you have been in the vehicle with your parents when you started to slide and you get that kind of grinding type sound when they brake, and you're sliding a little bit, that's the anti-lock brake system working. And again, it's just meant to be a safety feature to prevent from losing your ability to control the vehicle's speed. All right, what else?
Tomorrow, are we going to take both Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 tests?
Yep. My plan is to review Chapter 4 today, and then tomorrow we'll do the articles and attendance. And then if you have any other touch-up questions for 4, if not, we'll go right into the Chapter 4 test, and then we'll review and then take Chapter 5 tomorrow. My hopes was that we could do 3 and 4 today, but just with some of the questions that we had and stuff that we needed to go over today, I figured I'll just issue 3 and then we'll review 4 today and then knock out 4 and 5. So the good thing is over the weekend, and again, some of you, I had a couple people kind of confused on the schedule. We do not meet Saturday and Sunday. I will be available Saturday and Sunday to answer questions if you need it. So if you need to jump on Zoom to answer a question, I can do that. If you need to email me, I can respond to that. I don't have office hours over the weekend, but like I told you guys before, I can still Zoom, but it's not required. But we will not meet together as a class on Saturday. We will not meet together as a class on Sunday. We will be back here at 8:30 Monday morning. So basically the assignment for the weekend will primarily be to read and take notes over Chapter 6. And it'll be 1 chapter from here on out. So technically your homework tonight is going to be Chapter 5, but we will take 4 and 5 tomorrow. So my homework on Google Classroom today is review Chapter 4 and then read and take notes on Chapter 5. So good question. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be specifically about the chapter. Obviously, Lauren, your question was about the class in general, but it can be about driving in general. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the chapter. I mean, if it's a situation where you guys understand the chapter, that's great. But again, this is a time to have a good discussion about driving in general, because that's what the class is. All right, what other questions do you have? While you're thinking, one note I do have that I want to make sure I mention to you before I forget. I posted that survey yesterday for you guys. And again, I know some of you have emailed me, which is fine. I still want you to fill out the survey. I did realize one mistake I made. So it's not in the survey, it's something that I left out of the survey. So instead of deleting the survey, adding the question, and then having you guys resubmit the survey, for some of you, it might not even matter. But one thing I forgot to add in there is conflicts. So let's say you are going to be out of town the week of the 4th of July. Okay, so that entire week you cannot drive. Okay, if you have conflicts over the summer, like whether or not it's a consistent conflict or it's a vacation or something like that, please email me what your conflicts are, so we can schedule those appropriately. I will tell you that probably 95% of all the drives are going to be scheduled either between 8 to noon or noon to 4. Okay, so it'll either be the morning or the afternoon. So I know a lot of you that signed up for the Move 360, that program out at Dakota Valley. That's typically in the morning. So odds are, I would assume most of you that are enrolled in that program would prefer to be an afternoon driver. So again, like I said there, make sure whoever you want to pair up with, make sure they are an afternoon driver too. Because if you're morning or if you're afternoon and they're morning only, well, then your pair is not going to work. So just make sure that your schedules sync. And, you know, so we can plan accordingly. If one person is, I'm open every day of the week, and the other person is, well, I can only do mornings, well, then that's fine. Then you'll probably be a morning. So just make sure that your conflicts are similar. So if one person is the morning, can only drive in the morning, make sure your partner is available in the morning, if that makes sense. But again, if you do have any conflicts, email me what your conflicts are. If it's vacation, if it's I can't drive in the mornings because of this, or I can't drive in the afternoons because of this, that's fine. Or if it's one day a week, you know, we can work around that. But I will tell you, the more flexible you are, the more likely up the list you move. You know, but if you can only drive on this day or this day, odds are you're probably going to be pushed back later in the summer. Because we like to fill 3 consecutive days at the same time. So if you're eager to drive, you have to be flexible. All right, so hopefully I bought enough time to get a couple more questions in. What do you have?
Are the different kinds of braking for like different situations?
What do you mean different types of braking?
Because it talks about releasing the accelerator, and then the controlled braking, threshold braking, and then trail braking.
Okay. Okay, so control braking is basically just regular everyday braking, just applying the brake by squeezing the brake pedal, and that's it. Threshold braking is basically a more pressured braking, to the point where you apply a lot more pressure just to the threshold where the ABS system is not activated, but you're very close to that limit. That would be a harder braking. Trail braking is something you guys definitely need to learn. A lot of you forget trail braking, and this is what you get. You apply your control braking. When you go to stop, you lean forward and you don't do the trail braking, and you get this. You get that whiplash effect. Because what happens is you apply the brake and you don't let off of the brake. So what you're supposed to do is you apply the brake as appropriate when you are approaching a stop sign, stoplight, whatever. And then about 2 seconds before you actually make your stop, you want to ease off of the brake, which is your trail brake, because that allows you to come to a stop without having any of that forward, backward whiplash motion. So you have apply, you have hard apply, and then you have just backing off to make that nice, easy stop. All right, any other questions? All right, so like I said, today, if you haven't turned in the Chapter 3 tests, please make sure you turn that in today. Your homework is already posted on Google Classroom. Again, like I said, it is review Chapter 4, as we did today, and read and take notes on Chapter 5, because tomorrow we will test on 4, we'll review 5, and test on 5 tomorrow. Again, with those surveys, get those surveys filled out. If you have any conflicts, please make sure you email me those. Otherwise, if I don't hear from you, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if I don't hear from you, I assume that you're good Monday through Friday all summer. I know some instructors may look to plan on the weekends. You don't have to tell me that you're not available on the weekends. I'm going to assume you're good Monday through Friday. If the instructor wants to drive on the weekends with you, they will reach out to you and ask you, hey, would Saturday work at this time? Either yes or no. But otherwise, we will plan on scheduling you Monday through Friday. So again, with that, make sure, get your notes done. I know we didn't look at notes today. I will look at 3, 4, and 5 tomorrow. We'll probably look at 3 and 4 just before we take the test, so I can get those in. Again, after the articles and attendance, and then we'll review 5 and take the test on 5. So again, if you do have any questions, send me an email. If I'm available, I'll try to jump on Zoom, because sometimes I think just having a conversation makes things a lot easier. Please take advantage of the office hours from 7 to 8 tonight. Again, typically outside of class, I'm going to get on the office hours Zoom. So go to that one, not the classroom one. Both of those are posted on there. And then I will post the YouTube video hopefully before I go to work today. So with that, I hope you have a good day. And if I don't see you tonight, I will see you tomorrow morning. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr. Johnson.
We'll see you. Have a great day, Mr.
Thank you.
Johnson.
You too.
Thank you.